And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the Top Dog Talk podcast. Friday night, 7:30. You know what time it is. It's time to get back at it. Dan, how are you doing on this Friday evening?
I am exhausted. I had not slept all week long because I had to share a bed with my daughter and I had to drive all day in the rain. So I'm exhausted, but I'm excited to be here with you and with our family tonight.
Absolutely. We got a lot to talk about, and we're going to cram it in to some new show parameters to try and keep y'all involved throughout the night. With that being said, let's get right on into it. Dan, man, every time we have a Friday show, it feels like a week has over a week has gone by. I don't know why. It just feels like that. And it's only been 7 days since our last show. But you know, this time last week, we didn't know where Georgia was at in recruiting. I think there were some concerns among some fans about what Georgia's class was going to look like, whether NIL was going to drop Georgia out of that top three status that they've usually had so far under Kirby Smart. But now it looks like there's a lot more momentum. And I wanted to get your thoughts real quick on just where you think this Georgia class lies. And I know you talked about NIL last week, but I mean, how are you feeling overall about Georgia's prospects in this class?
Generally, I'm a little bit hesitant to be excited and I'm a little bit hesitant to be upset because so many things can happen. Georgia is definitely one of those teams that recruits on momentum. I think we covered the Arch thing last week ad nauseum. That kid is not getting flipped, not to us. I don't think so. So that's out, right? And then you see some of these other guys starting to go to different places and you get a little bit frustrated and you start to wonder. Like I sent you a text and we didn't know if we kind of wanted to broach the topic or whatever because I might look silly in about 2 weeks because Kirby can do that to you. They can make you look silly. But I was like, my statement was that if Georgia was to win the national title, the floodgates would open. Kirby could get whatever he wanted, and Georgia would go on a dynamic run that nobody else has seen. Outside of Alabama, the run that Alabama, well, maybe USC back in the day when they had it really rolling with Pete Carroll. But I really felt like if Georgia, all they had to do was break that seal, win the title, and they would be on easy street. Kirby would get everybody and everything he wants. Well, ironically enough, and granted, there are a million different factors, okay? A million different factors, but I feel like that's not happening at all. Like all these other teams are getting the guys that selfishly, I feel like we're supposed to be getting, and we're not getting them. So is that a trend or is that just a anomaly or does it not matter at all because it's July 8th and Kirby has plenty of time before December rolls around to get this thing back on track? I think probably the latter is where you need to be. Trust Kirby, trust that the staff is going to get everybody and everything that they need, and we're going to be fine. So I'm a little bit emotionally all over the place, Harrison, because I anticipated that we were going to get everybody and everything, and we're not right now. But Kirby has shown us in the past that if you complain in the summertime about a class, you're going to look foolish come signing day. Because how many times in the last couple of years has the Georgia fan base just gone batshit crazy in the summertime, and then at the end of the day, we're number one and number two, and then like you got Brooks sitting over there in the corner going, I told you it was going to happen." So I hope I covered your question adequately, but that's I'm like a mixed emotional type deal here.
Absolutely. I had a lot of questions about, obviously there's been a lot of momentum on the defensive side of the ball for Georgia as of late. I think it's always been that way. If Georgia needs to get a commitment or get that momentum rolling, I mean, all Kirby has to do is hit up one of his defensive prospects and, they'll commit on the spot because who doesn't want to play for Kirby Smart and that defense right now? I mean, you also got Will Muschamp, Glenn Schumann, all those defensive minds, great coaches over there. But Dan, turn our focus to the offensive side of the ball because that's where some of the excitement is, and that's where the momentum's starting. Georgia landed 4-star wide receiver Nye Carr out of Colquitt County High School in Moultrie, Georgia. A speedster by all intents and purposes. Everything I've seen about this prospect, I didn't know much about him until he committed. I didn't even know that Georgia was in on the kid at all. So it was really out of the blue for me to see that he committed to Georgia, and then you start, looking at the guys that, everyone looks to when a prospect they don't know very much commits, it's you fall in love with the kid. I mean, he's a top 100 player, top, as fast as it can be. I mean, just absolutely blowing kids out of the water with his speed. But it's not, he's doing more off the field for Georgia right now than he's, doing on. I mean, right now his off the field impact is going to be huge because I mean, look what he just landed. He helped land Georgia, his teammate, 2024 prospect, 5-star tight end Landen Thomas, out of, like I said, Colquitt County, Georgia. He's 6'4", 230 pounds, and the number one overall tight end prospect, according to 247 Sports. Dan, my man Todd Hartley, I mean, that dude's an ace of a recruiter. And when you think Georgia's room can't get more stacked, he go ahead and stacks it even more.
Yeah, listen, Todd Hartley has done a ridiculous job, to be completely honest. I mean, what he's been able to do with that tight end room is beyond remarkable. And if you think about a couple years ago, how it used to be a joke, like if Georgia completed the pass to a tight end, it was, oh my God, Georgia completed the pass to a tight end. I didn't even know that they knew that was possible. Or I didn't even know that we had tight ends on our roster. Or I didn't think we had any plays in the playbook for a tight end. And now we're like tight end U, which is the most ridiculous thing in the world if you think about where we've come from. But Todd Hartley has done an amazing job. And if you look at like the history of Todd Hartley, he's a hard worker and he's come up through the ranks, but there was nothing out there that said this was going to happen. There was no indicators. There were no flashing lights where Todd Hartley, you have to have him on your staff because he's going to be the greatest recruiter on earth. So you have to give a lot of credit, not only to Hartley, but to Kirby Smart for seeing that. And then, I'm not there. I've never been in the room with any of them. So I don't know what happens behind closed doors, but if there are a lot of guys that are responsible for the success he's having because they've shared information, they're helping him, whatever the case may be, then that's amazing. But sometimes you just have to think that some of these guys just have it inside where they just have that personality where they're never going to lose. They won't take no for an answer. And, like you have the guy that, let's just say it's a roofing company and he's the number one roofing salesman in the entire United States of America and sells, $15 million worth or $20 million worth of commercial or residential roofs a month. And then you got the other guy who works his ass off, but he just can't do it because he doesn't have that talent. So it's crazy, man. It's insane the amount of talent he's able to pull.
And we tweeted out the resume over on Twitter. Whatever day it was when Landen Thomas committed. I mean, you look at the list, some of the guys he's had. Rylan Goody, 4-star. Brett Seether, 3-star. Darnell Washington, 5-star. He was the number 2 tight end in that class, that 2020 class. Then you land Eric Gerbert out of the transfer portal last summer. He was the number 1 tight end in that 2020 recruiting class. Then you go to Brock Bowers in 2021, 4-star. Oscar Delp, 4-star. Now, those are all the guys that's on Georgia's roster right now that Todd Hartley has recruited and has landed. Then you look at the guys coming behind him. Peter Sperling, 4-star, current 2023 commit. Lawson Lucky, 4-star, current 2023 commit. Then you land Landen Thomas, 5-star, number 1 tight end in his class. Going to be absolutely amazing to watch him play. I mean, yes, he still has 2 years of high school to go before he even steps foot on campus in Athens. But, the big question that everyone's having now is how long and what will it take before Todd Hartley starts getting his name mentioned, in the same breath, in the same sentence as Ohio State's Brian Hartline, the wide receivers coach. Because, Dan, I was doing a little research on Hartline today. You look at some of the last 3, you look at some of the most recent recruiting classes that Hartley has stacked together over at Ohio State, dating back to 2019. He landed Jamison Williams, 4-star wide receiver, number 82 nationally. Garrett Wilson, 5-star, number 20 nationally. Then you go to 2020. He lands Julian Fleming, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Gee Scott Jr., Mookie Cooper, 2 5-stars and 2 4-stars. Then you go to 2021. Emeka Egbuka, 5-star. Marvin Harrison Jr., 4-star. Jalen Ballard, 4-star. I mean, does that not sound similar to what Georgia has put together in that tight end room? Just the number of 4 and 5 stars that is stacked to the depths over at Ohio State?
Yeah, it's very, very, very similar what they've been able to do with their room, not the wide receiver room, but maybe Todd Hartley can start helping out in some other areas, and we can start picking up some of these recruits because I would love to have as many wide receivers coming in. I would love to have some of these massive offensive linemen coming in. I would love to have some of these defensive guys that we're missing out on. Maybe Todd Hartley needs to just go over there and rub everybody's forehead or something. I don't know, but you're absolutely correct. The class that he was able to put together with tight ends mirrors that wide receiver class very, very well. So your point is valid and taken. And I think Todd Hartley has just done wonders. He's just done wonders. And how spoiled are we to have somebody like Del McGee, who's been on our staff for such a long time? Trey Scott is doing a great job with the defensive line. Glenn Schumann has done a great job. Landen did a fantastic job. Unfortunately, he's not with us anymore out there at Oregon. And he's going to do a great job out there too. He just is. Alabama is not going to go away. Ohio State's never going to go away. And Georgia's not going to go away. And now if you add in Oregon, because Dan Lanning, what did Kirby do? Kirby took everything that he learned from Nick and brought it here. Well, Lanning would be silly not to do the exact same thing, would he not? So, it's just like I think we've covered that really, really well. But Todd Hartley is amazing, and we are very fortunate to have him. So let's move on to the next segment because we don't want to stay on anything real long here. In my next segment is going to be my rant, and it's a little bit off topic. It's not a football thing, but it is very relevant because the Summer Classic is going to be here next week. And my rant is on the All-Star voting policy, right? So the way that they vote, and if you're unfamiliar, I will tell you how. If you're very familiar, forgive me and bear with me, just hang tight. It's all the players in baseball are eligible, and you just go through and you pick a player for each position and 3 outfielders. You don't deal with the pitchers at all. You pick who you want. And then the number 1 overall vote getter from each league is automatically a starter. And then they narrow it down to 2 people per position after that. And then you got to revote and try to get and pick for your starters. And then the manager picks the backups. I guess that's how that part goes. Well, in theory, I guess you could say that sounds good, but I always get frustrated because what is the criteria for the All-Star game? What is the criteria for the Midsummer Classic? Is it who had the best first half? Is it who has been, who's one of the best in the game? Is it a career award? Like, what is your criteria for making these votes? Because numbers aren't it. If you look at the guys who are putting up the best numbers for the year, sometimes they don't even get hardly any votes at all. And that's absolutely ridiculous. But my bigger frustration comes in. So all these guys get voted. It's a popularity contest. Let's just use second base for the National League as an example. Your 2 finalists for second base are Ozzie Albies and Jazz Chisholm. Hands, does anybody know why that's a problem? Because they're both on the DL. They're both on the, I believe, 60-day DL. So neither one of them can play. So awesome, you're going to vote one of them into as a starter of the All-Star game, which is great that they're going to get recognized as a starter. But neither one of them can play. So what is I don't know what the right answer is. I mean, for me, the answer is just let the players and the managers vote on the All-Star game because they have a better sense. And I think as a player, wouldn't it mean more to you if it came from your peers than if it came from just some random fans? I mean, everybody wants to be loved. I understand that. But it's like if somebody who doesn't work with you, doesn't work in your industry, doesn't really understand everything that you go through on a daily basis, if they say, hey, you're doing a good job, you're like, okay, great. You don't know what I do, but okay. You think I'm doing a great job? Awesome. Thank you for the compliment. But if your boss tells you you're doing a great job, doesn't that carry a little bit more weight? Because that's somebody who's intimately involved in what you do. That's somebody who is the person that's putting you out there to perform. So if your manager and if your players, if your peers are the ones who are voting you in, doesn't that mean more? And don't you think they would get it right? Because, for example, Cal Ripken Jr. starts in the All-Star game his last year. He was shitty his last year. Can we just say that? Can we just get the elephant out of the room? Yeah, but he starts the game. It's just like, oh, we just want to recognize him, whatever. Okay, and that probably would have happened anyway, so it may be a terrible example, but you know, I just feel like it would carry more weight if it came from your players, and then also a lot of this stuff wouldn't happen where you're voting on guys who can't play anyway. So then, what's the point? So anyway, um, that's my. It's a short rant. I'm sorry, it's a short rant tonight, but it's good. That's what I got. It's just the All Star voting is stupid to me. Doesn't make sense. I don't know why the fans have any input anyway, because fans are idiots for the most part. But I mean, kind of like bringing the robo umpire into the debate, and that's driven by the fans. So I'll let you announce that we are going to have a very special guest for our episode number 50.
And Dan, I actually want you to do it. Dan is the man, and set up something we've been teasing for weeks now. And episode 50, it's pretty special. We're halfway to 100 at this point, and I believe we started this back in December of 2020, something like that, or right before, maybe even 2019. I know it was right before the episode, right before it was 2020 actually. I think. I don't know. 2019 to 2020, right there, right before the Baylor game, the Sugar Bowl. When Georgia got that big win in the Sugar Bowl with an offense that wasn't too hot that year. But Dan has set up something we've been teasing since basically Dan's inception over here into this podcast. Dan was a former professional umpire, umpired a lot, and I mean a lot of minor league games over there in baseball. Very knowledgeable in baseball and also football and basketball. If you haven't heard by now, if you haven't listened to the podcast until now, very knowledgeable in all sports. So Dan, I want you to tell them what exactly are we setting up for this special episode of the Top Dog Talk podcast.
Okay, so dating back to right when Brooks started the Discord, and we kind of got it in there. Every time baseball season would roll around, the robo umpire conversation would come up. Everybody hates the umpires, and by proxy, everybody hates me. I am the pincushion in the Discord whenever baseball stuff happens. Brooks loves to, he knows it riles me up, so he loves to do that, and he loves to champion for the robo umpire. And my philosophy all along has been, be careful what you wish for. You just might get it. And now you are, and you're going to see why it's a terrible idea, because things that have been called a ball these guys' entire life is going to be called a strike and not a dot. So you can hear this from me and it doesn't mean anything because nobody cares. But I'm going to bring a very good friend of mine on. His name is Bob Boehner. He was the president of the Northwoods League, which is the sister league of the the famous Woodbat College League on the East Coast. What is it? Up in New Hampshire area. I just went blank. Oh my gosh. I just had it. Anyway, so it's the Northwoods League. It's the College Woodbat League. You basically get everybody from the middle of the country, West Coast. You get like University of Wisconsin, Illinois, USC, all that kind of stuff. That's where those guys play. And then the rest of them go over to the Cape Cod League. Thank you, God. The Cape Cod League. So Bob Boehner was president of Northwoods League. He is the person who is responsible for getting me into professional baseball. He is the person that I call whenever I have a question about anything. He is probably the second smartest baseball man I know. The smartest guy passed away. That was Mr. Wendelstadt, not Harry. That would be Harry Wendelstadt. That man is responsible for more than half of the rules that are in the rule book. While he was umpiring, something would happen that there's no rule for, and he would come up with something on the fly and be like, "This is how we're going to call it," and then they would write it down. That's how half of the damn rules in the rule book are. I have another guy, Brent Rice, was the lead instructor at Wendelstadt, but he is intimately still involved in the game of baseball, minor league baseball, and professional baseball. So I didn't think bringing him on would be very good because I don't know how much he could say. But Bob, even though he has every Major League Baseball umpire in his phone book and he could call any one of them and they would answer immediately, I think he'd be willing to talk a little bit more. He will clarify some of the things that may be confusing. He will explain a lot of the things and make it real understandable for people to grasp. He's a great conversationalist. He's very intelligent. He can communicate very, very well. I think he is going to be a home run of a guest. Pardon the pun.
It's going to be an absolutely stacked episode, considering we will have some guests come into the fall as we get closer to the season. So why not open it up with a guest that Dan knows very well and a topic that Dan is hot about, as our friend Bruce Austin would say for MBR. It's going to make for an entertaining episode 50 of the Top Dog Podcast. We want to give that back to y'all. We teased it for a while now, and just right, just last week, the stars have aligned and Dan set it all up. But with that, we're going to get into what we call the main event segment of the evening, an ongoing theme of each episode over the last few weeks. We've been breaking down, bringing to y'all the fall camp position preview, picking a new position every week, or positions, plural, because we wanted to. I mean, yeah, we can talk about the defensive line for 15 minutes, but I mean, why not just talk about the front seven as a whole, and action pack it together? So there's more, there's more for y'all to listen to, and you don't have to hear us repeat the same points over and over again about one dude. With that being said, Dan, I mean, Georgia's losing a lot, and I mean a lot in that front seven. You lose 6 major contributors. Trayvon Walker, first-round draft pick. Jordan Davis, first-round draft pick. Devontae Wyatt, first-round draft pick. Quay Walker, first-round draft pick. See a theme there? Nakobe Dean, a day 2 draft pick. I'm blanking on what round he went. I think he went 4th round, 3rd round. Channing Tindall, I believe, went 3rd round, if my mind's not blanking on me there. I mean, those guys alone basically made up for a majority of Georgia's production defensively. Tackles, sacks, I mean, you name it, they're probably right there up on the stat sheet. So, that leaves the question, what does Georgia return? Everyone that is doubting this Georgia defense or is predicting that Georgia's defense is going to take a step back, which, I mean, yeah, that is true. They are going to take a step back because Georgia just had a historical year last year on defense. I mean, one of the best defense of all time. And, you're not going to bring back all of that star talent. I mean, it just wasn't going to be possible. So, it's going to be interesting to see how Georgia replicates that. And on that note, Dan, we're going to start with the linebackers first. Georgia doesn't have a single career start at linebacker.
No, Georgia doesn't have a single start at linebacker, but they do bring back a lot of production. So we've talked about this a couple of different times where Georgia has had the ability to rotate guys in. Now, granted, middle linebacker, you didn't see. Man, what is wrong with me today?
It's Friday.
You didn't see him really rotate the middle linebacker position with Nakobe Dean. But a lot of the edge rushers, outside linebackers, they kind of rotated a little bit, and you got to see a lot of these other guys. I'm not overly concerned about what Georgia brings back at the linebacker or defensive line for that matter, because they have so much talent. We've covered this a little bit. Jalen Carter at tackle. I mean, I believe there's no way you can go through this year and say you're not going to feel the loss of somebody like Jordan Davis. Jordan Davis is one of a kind. He's one of the biggest humans to grace this earth, and he is a people mover. He freed up the linebackers to operate with very little trash. Jordan Davis did wonders for this defense, and there's no way. And this isn't to take away from anybody else that's here. He is just such an one-off that I think you're going to feel that loss some way or another. Now, there are many people who will tell you that Jalen Carter is better. He's a better player. And that 100% could be true. And I don't think you're going to find a lot of people in the Georgia family that are going to argue that point. I think most people feel like he is better. But, who are you going to put next to him? You got Zion Logue. You got TID, Tremel Wather, Warren Brinson. And you've got some of the new guys coming in, Christian Michael. There's a couple of other guys. Why am I forgetting everything? This is just such a bad day for me.
I hope, Kristen Miller, Michael Williams, Marvin Jones, just some names right there. I'm blanking on the kid's name now, but we'll move on. But continue your point.
My point is that Georgia has been developing these players behind the guys that left. Brooks had a tweet the other day where he said that Georgia doesn't return a single step at linebacker, but by the end of the season, they could be the strongest unit on the field. And he takes a lot of pride in being right versus just getting content out there. So for him to put that out there, he feels really strongly about it. And he is much more in tune with that position group than I am. My daughter's leaving. Sorry. So anyway, I really feel like for him to say something like that, he's got to feel really, really strongly to even put that out there in the atmosphere. So the names you may not know the way that you knew the guys who just left, but let's just be honest. After the 2017 season, nobody felt that good about what was coming back, and they're like, "We'll never be that good again." Well, hell, we were better. So Kirby's goal is to be better. It's not to hang his hat on the 2021 team and be like, "Well, I had the greatest team ever," and that's it, folks. That's the best I can do. Hope you enjoyed it. It was fun. That's not that's not his that is not his DNA. That's just not how he's made. Now, granted, could we have a step back? I guess we could, but I don't feel like we are. And a lot of these names that you have on here, these guys were extremely highly recruited out of high school, and they've been coached up now. The one thing I think is fair to say about Kirby is he's not going to put you on the field if you're not prepared. I cannot remember, and I could be wrong, but I don't recall a situation where a kid gets on the field and I'm like, he does not need to be on the field. Like, what is he doing? That guy's an idiot. Like, he's clueless. Coach, what are you doing? Why is he out there? I mean, I could say the opposite where we're like, why is this kid not out there? Why is this kid not out there? That we've said that. But I don't believe we've ever said, why is this kid out, except for Stetson. Everybody says that. But that's not the point. The point is, with his defensive players, I don't recall him putting people in a position where they won't be successful. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Definitely not wrong there. And, I totally agree with you. Jordan Davis is going to be hard to replace. And yes, you do have what people will consider a, really great talent in Jalen Carter, who can play, not only can he play nose tackle, he can play, your straight up 3 technique defensive tackle. He can play defensive end, come off the edge. I mean, they do about anything with him that they want. I mean, he can do anything. He's a massive human being, not as massive as Jordan Davis, but he can move. Very athletic. He can get after the passer. He can stop the run. But the big question comes down to, when you go back and you watch games where Jordan Davis was not there, Georgia's defense looked different. That run defense was not as touted or is not as vaunted as it was when Jordan Davis, 99, was, anchoring down the middle. There's a couple times where, go back and watch the Sugar Bowl back in 2018 when they lost to Texas. I've never seen a quarterback run as successful as Sam Ehlinger did up at the middle of that Georgia defense. And that was a Georgia defense that did not have Jordan Davis. He got hurt before that game, had to miss it with an injury, among other players that missed that game due to opt-outs or injuries. So how does Georgia replace that? Question is, I don't think you can, like Dan said, you can replace Jordan Davis. But I think you have players around Jalen Carter, who is everyone's touting as, a top 5, top 10 draft pick this coming April. You got players around him that I think can make up for it. I mean, you look at the 2 edge rushers that Georgia has coming back, Dan. You have Nolan Smith, Robert Beal. Nolan Smith was the number 1 prospect coming out of high school. Number 1 overall, was supposed to be, in the position that Will Anderson is in now, where he's going to be a first-round talent. He's going to be a first-round draft pick. All he has to do is play the season out, and boom, there he is. I think some even had Nolan Smith, projected to leave after his junior year this past year. Now he's coming back for senior year where he's the star of the show. I mean, I think everyone remembers what Azeez Ojulari did when he was the star of the show. When the people in front of him left, and it was just Azeez, and you had a couple guys rotating in and out, among them Jermaine Johnson and Nolan Smith. I mean, I got a lot of confidence in Nolan Smith. I think, he's taken a lot of criticism over the years because he's not been that 10 sacks a season guy that everyone dreamed of having. But I think, Dan, I think this year could be his year. Not for 10 sacks, but, I mean, I think he's going to make a name for himself.
Well, I think Trayvon, oh gosh, here we go again. I think if you're looking at like what Trayvon Walker did, he was able to go number 1 overall in the draft, right? But he didn't put up the numbers that you're talking about for Nolan Smith. And, Kirby came out and said, if you watch our video, you will understand why our guys didn't put up those numbers. It's because I'm constantly rotating them. I'm keeping them fresh. I'm getting everybody involved. That does 2 things. It keeps you healthy throughout the season. It keeps you healthier so that you can perform later on in your career, especially in the playoffs when it matters most, right? You're not beaten up. You're not, if you look at a lot of these other teams, we have guys taking every snap, playing or whatever. our guys looked faster. Would you say? I mean, that's a fair assertion, right? They kind of look faster, especially in the fourth quarter against Alabama. Our guys look fresher, healthier, better. And that's because Kirby's done a great job of rotating. And then on top of that, all the guys are buying into it together. And they had that big segment that they did with Kirk Herbstreit last year where they talked about togetherness. They talked about the connectivity, the unity that that group has, the defense has, and the defensive line and linebackers all together. And you've got all of these guys, they were on the team, they were around it, they were in the room, they were getting the same level of coaching as these other guys. And when they're all that highly rated, it's, this is simplistic and it's unfair, but it's plug and play. It's these guys are so daggum good. They're just waiting for their opportunity, right? And as soon as they get the opportunity, they pounce on it and they succeed and they do well. And that's the exact same thing that's happened over at Alabama. There was a good friend of my dad's. Their last name is Shepard. Their son's name was Austin Shepard. He went to North Gwinnett. Could have went anywhere he wanted to go. He went to Alabama. Everybody told him he was stupid to go to Alabama. He's an offensive tackle. They're like, you're never going to play. You're never going to see the field. He's like, I'll play. I'll play my junior year. And they're like, you're dumb. Like, you can go to Clemson. You can go to anywhere. And he could have went anywhere. He's a high 4-star, maybe low 5-star offensive lineman. Could have went anywhere. Went to Alabama. Got the coaching. Got a couple plays here and there. They won his junior year. First round draft pick, Minnesota Vikings. These coaches, they have a system. And if you believe in it and you're able to work within it and you do everything that you're asked to do and you don't take it out, you don't mentally check out. If you don't do that, you can be successful, highly successful. And that's just one example, albeit not at Georgia. But at Georgia, you have the same things going on right now. You have guys that are biding their time, doing the right things, getting their body right, taking in all the information, working their butts off every single day during practice. Whenever they get the opportunity, they're successful. Why? Because they believe in it. And if you take that theory and you apply it to all of these 4- and 5-star kids that you have listed on this paper, that is why you're not going to see that drastic drop-off ever at Georgia, unless Kirby just pulls a Mark Richt. And I don't mean any disrespect. I love Coach Richt. But, towards the end of his tenure here at Georgia, he didn't have the enthusiasm for recruiting, and it showed on the product on the field. Kirby said that the other day in an interview with, I don't remember who it was. It's not important. But he said, you can't out-coach Jimmy's and Joe's. You can't out-coach talent. He's like, you might. So he's like, I got to go out and get the best players. My guys know that if we don't have the best players, we don't have a shot to win. So that's never going to stop.
Absolutely not. And I think, that's going to be the big turning point with all this NIL is whether or not he can continue to get those Jimmy and Joes. I mean, we've talked about it in this program a lot, Dan. You got kids coming out of high school making more money than, second and third round draft picks this past year. I think you even mentioned a first-round draft pick, making more money than a first-round draft pick. A starting quarterback, the Atlanta Falcons, Marcus Mariota, Dan made the point last week. You got a kid going to high school or coming out of high school. It's going to come out of high school, in January or whenever he decides to enroll. It's going to make more money than Marcus Mariota does currently as the projected starting quarterback of the Atlanta Falcons. Let that sink in. Well, that's ridiculous.
There's one more point to make as well. And that is that if you look at all the NFL scouts in the combine and after this draft, what did they say? They said the one thing that surprised them, all the rookie mini camps, is how well prepared the Georgia players were to play immediately. That they're all contributing right away in the summer, OTAs and all that stuff. Is that they could not believe how quickly they were able to play, how well prepared they were. So a lot of these kids are going to go get that money and they're going to go play, but not all coaches are created equal. And I don't mean any disrespect to some of these other guys, but Sarkisian doesn't have, and his coaching staff, they don't have the proven track record to get guys into the NFL and then them be ready to compete day one. Okay. Alabama does have that pedigree. Georgia now has that pedigree. But, what is, Lincoln Riley? I mean, I don't hear glowing remarks about all of his Oklahoma players when they got to the NFL. What about Ryan Day? I don't hear glowing remarks about his guys. I mean, well, the defensive guys, but is he even responsible for that? You know what I mean? The defensive guys do well. I don't know. I always come back to money now is cool, but generational money is great. And you don't get the generational money unless you get multiple contracts in the NFL. And the only way to do that is be prepared to play. And this may take a couple years to flesh itself out, but at the end of the day, you have to ask yourself, and a lot of these kids do, and that explains why Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State continue to get 5-star players when they know that they're blocked by other 5-star players, is because I know this program will have me ready to play day one in the NFL and I'll be successful. Whereas this program is going to give me a lot of money, but there's no guarantee that I'm going to get any better while I'm there.
Exactly, and that's going to be, that's why everyone, I think most of the Georgia fans are concerned when, you lose out on an elite prospect that, hey, maybe 5-10 years ago you don't miss out on, or, even 2 years ago you don't miss out on. So that's something we're going to have to, stick around and watch. But getting back into linebackers and defensive line, you mentioned off some of these names that Georgia has coming back that, saw some snaps last year, but that didn't necessarily get a start. One of those guys that really is exciting is going to be someone that everyone's going to want to watch is, Jamon Dumas Johnson. And before we wrap it up, let's finish these off real quick. We talked about the defensive line. Jamon Dumas Johnson, Shmuel London, Xavier Sorey Jr., Tresman Marshall, all these guys coming back. I mean, don't have a start, but, in their own right, they were 4- and 5-star recruits.
Well, and I think Nolan Smith is going to have to take a huge leadership role in that locker room and make sure that everybody's on board. Losing somebody like Nakobe Dean, I think one of the biggest things about losing a guy like that is a great leader. And there's plenty of good leaders, and they said that they all shared that responsibility. But you saw Nakobe Dean. Was it Quay Walker? Who was it? Who in the national championship game he jerked?
Tyndall.
Yeah, he made a mistake. He jerked him. Like, you got to be the man to do that. I mean, you just do. You got to be the man, and you got to have the respect of everybody on the team to do that. Because if you are not, the new term is, if you ain't him, you can't get away with that. And he was him.
Got to see people step up as leaders. Got to see people step up on the field and make plays. Who's going to be the guy to run from hash to hash to go, tackle a, motioning running back behind, for a loss of 2 instead of a yard, instead of a 2-yard gain. I mean, simply that incredible tackle that Nakobe Dean made could have been turned into an incredibly explosive play. So with that being said, we're going to wrap it up for episode 48 of the Top Dog Talk podcast. Guys, we are 2 weeks away from episode 50. We spoke about it a little bit at length today of what we have in store for that. I'm sure the University of Georgia and Kirby Smart and that staff also have some things in store for us as we go along because of various recruiting news. I believe that's also the week of SEC Media Day, so we may be talking to y'all a little bit more as the weeks goes on, as things start to pick up. We are on the road to fall camp, Dan, which means we're on the road to football season. My God, it's been a while. I can't wait for September 3rd. It is going to be absolutely insane. I mean, I remember last year, what's better than waking up the first Saturday, the first real Saturday of the season, not no week 0 BS that ESPN be putting out that features, Nebraska playing in, whatever Nebraska does, the first real weekend of college football. It's going to be a blast.
Well, I will tell you firsthand that I will take any football. So you can give me week -1. I will watch it.
Absolutely. Dan, y'all can find, that is Dan Kiley. Y'all can find Dan Kiley at Dan Kiley3 on Twitter. You can find me at Harrison Reno on Twitter. Guys, make sure you reach out, interact with us. I know it's Friday episodes. I know we lose part of our audience because it is Friday episode, but this is the last Friday episode for the time being. We had some conflicts that have prevented us from being here on Tuesday. Vacations, me being out of town, all that. Luckily, we'll be back next Tuesday, 7:30, same place, same time. Make sure you like and subscribe to the video on YouTube. Share it with your friends. Share the podcast as well. If you're not much of a YouTube watcher and you like you like the audio content where you can go outside, work in the yard and still listen to us, make sure you share that too. You can find us on Apple Podcast, iTunes, you name it, Spotify. I think we have even something on Amazon with Amazon up there with all the intelligent readers up there. You got that. So you can find us almost everywhere, guys. That's Dan Kiley. I'm Harrison Reno. This is the Top Dog Talk podcast. See you next Tuesday at 7:30.